educational meeting. We are recording this, so people who may not be able to make the whole meeting or want to take a look at this, if they couldn't make the meeting, so if you hit got it,
Okay,
I would appreciate that. If you
Okay.
want to remain
I'll
off
get it
screen,
later.
welcome to remain off screen. If you want to remain on screen, you're welcome to remain on screen so we can see you. It's your choice. Tonight, we're talking about living your best
I
life
have
with
it,
memory.
Nancy. Goodbye.
Somebody's got, okay.
Yep. So tonight, so I asked that you put yourselves on mute for now. If you haven't, I can try to do that for you in a minute. But let me introduce Ronnie Lang, our speaker tonight. Ronnie Lang is a clinical social worker, licensed clinical social worker with over 40 years experience. Hard to believe, so long, but no, you look so young. Working in the field of clinical social work with specialty in aging and family caregiving. Currently, she's clinical social worker in the Department of Psychiatry at Greenwich Hospital, which is an affiliate of Yale, providing psychotherapy to older adults and families. Additionally, she leads the Family Caregiver Support Program at Greenwich Hospital. Ronnie earned a BA in psychology at City College of New York and her master's of social work at the University of Wisconsin. She received a postgraduate certificate in gerontology from Hunter College, Brookdale Center of Aging, and a certificate in geriatric mental health from California State University in Los Angeles. She is currently an adjunct instructor at the University of Connecticut, Stanford campus, teaching classes on adult development and aging, gender and aging in American society, death and dying, and bereavement. In November of 2022, Ronnie Lang was selected and recognized as Social Worker of the Year for her
Good.
dedication and compassion for elder care services of patients and caregivers, for being a gifted clinician who supports colleagues and the public, for making a difference every day in the field of social work. I am so proud that Ronnie is here tonight. I have considered Ronnie one of my mentors for many, many years. And I am Michelle Piskin. I am the Vice President of Training and Education for Caring Kind. And I welcome you all tonight to this very, very important topic. So I'm going to turn the table over to Ronnie. Just a quick housekeeping piece. So if you can put yourself on mute, if you have a question, you can write them in the chat or raise your hand. We will take breaks throughout and answer questions as we go. So you have an opportunity to have your questions and your voices heard, because that's why we're here tonight. And I will turn this over to Ronnie now.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to this wonderful program. And I have to say that it's been a pleasure to watch Michelle grow in her professional development. And she's one of my mentors now. I turned to her as she might have turned to me years ago. And I have to say that for most of the years that I've been a social worker working with older adults and their families, most of the programs that I've been to or that I've led have been support groups for caregivers, with less focus on the person who's been diagnosed with memory loss. And so there's plenty of resources for caregivers, and there's less for people early on. And what I really admire about Caring Kind is that you have so many services for people from the very beginning of a diagnosis and through the illness, and for the person diagnosed, and for families, and for all of us who worry about, could this be in our future at some point, because we're all vulnerable. So in terms of today's presentation, Michelle will be our chat box checker, and she will see when there are some questions, and I will stop so I'm not blathering for the whole time.
And we will take a quick break, maybe 5 minutes. We can only endure so much without using the bathroom. So
okay, so so now Michelle, the next slide, please. So these are just my acknowledgements. I think of the people who went before me, people I never met, but except I heard them speak at conferences. Lisa Snyder, Robin Yale, Daniel Kuhn, Lisa Gwither, Peter Rabbins, and many other professionals. Those are the people that I never met, but that I admire. I've heard them speak. And then there are my pals here, who I still have contact with. Maureen Matthews, Jed Levine, Eleanor Ternatora. I didn't pronounce her name right. Pronounce it for me, Michelle.
Eleanor Tornate Makesh.
Okay, that's it. And Michelle Piskin, Jed Levine, I put his name twice because he's been so helpful, and Mary Middleman. And also to acknowledge all the caregivers that shared their story with me and all the people at the early stage who shared their stories with me. And must have been almost 25 years ago or 30 years ago, Maureen Matthews said to me, Ronnie, why don't you run an early stage support group? And I was like, oh, I don't know if I could, and it must be hard. And it was wonderful. And, people would pass the group room and they would hear people laugh. There was crying, there was laughing. It wasn't all solemn. And I really learned from listening to the stories of people and realized how important those stories were. So next slide. So what are we going to talk about? I don't know if we'll cover everything completely, but recognition of the problem, getting a diagnosis and what you should do with it, understanding other people's responses. What's the message you want to give to your family and friends? From most people who know they have memory loss, what they want to tell their family is, hear me, listen to me, nothing about me without me. What are the challenges, complexities, frustration, and the good times? How to maintain friendships, create new ones, dealing with the oops, forgetting, blunders, mistakes. We all make them with a memory loss problem or not. And meaningful activities. How do you find meaningful activities in your life once you're diagnosed with any medical problem? Because we don't want to become the other. We don't want people to think of persons who have memory loss as the other. Oh, next slide. So I don't know if anybody ever read Susan Sontag's book, but it was called Illness as a Metaphor. And what she says is we all have dual citizenship in the world of the well and the kingdom of the sick. And we all prefer to use our good passport, but sooner or later, each of us is obliged, at least for a little while, to identify ourselves as citizens of that other place. So memory loss is no different than cancer, stroke, other illnesses. And we shouldn't be blaming the victim for their disease, and we shouldn't other them. So that's a real strong message, because we're all a scan away, a blood test away from a bad diagnosis. Is that not true? So it's not just memory loss. So let's move on. Okay, this is your first question. It's not an essay question. You just have to write in. In the chat box, you have your choice. You could write in, how many of you have been given a diagnosis of memory loss, cognitive loss? Just put diagnosed, one word, diagnosed, or how many of you are worried about having a memory loss? That probably would be everybody. Put worried. How many of you are care partners? You can put that in. And how many of you are here because you're a professional and you want to understand early stage issues? So how does that?
Excuse me?
Huh? Yeah.
I'm sorry. For some reason on my screen, I'm not.
You're not seeing the, did you see chat at the bottom of the screen? Who's having a problem? Teresa?
Can the person who was talking, if you're muted, can you unmute yourself?
I think someone was saying they can't see the chat at the bottom of the
I can see
screen.
the chat.
Oh, it's a
Oh.
little, it looks like a little bubble at the bottom.
Right.
I see that now, but my other issue was that my box is there with my name on the screen, but the video isn't coming in.
You know what you could do? Push video at the bottom. First it says mute, then it says stop video or start video. If there's a line across that camera, just hit that and you'll come up.
One thing is it's taken over the screen, so it's not showing all the menu controls at the bottom it normally
Right.
would.
Oh, okay.
We have
So
to
if
go
you
to the very
hover, if
top.
you hover over the bottom, it may come up.
It's
Okay, I
actually,
don't want to bother everybody with this.
Yeah.
It also depends on what device you're using. If you're using a cell phone, it's a little more complicated. If you're on a laptop or a desktop, you get to see the options on the bottom of your screen.
Yeah, I
But
do.
Teresa, can you tell us what brought you here? Worried, diagnosed, care partner, professional. Do you feel comfortable sharing that? If not, we know you're one of the four. And no points are deducted if you don't answer the question. But, you know, people seem to be filling it in. I don't know if, Michelle, you've seen some of the answers, so we have an idea.
We have a real mix of individuals who are here.
Okay,
So I think this is a great presentation for everybody.
okay, that's good to know.
Mhm.
So, okay, so we have something brought you here tonight, and hopefully something will keep you here. So what I wanted to share with you next is my bookshelf with caregiving books. And this is just the books that I have at my home. I have a whole bookshelf of books in my office. So you want to go to the next slide?
Sure.
Thank you. Here are my books. And you can see there's plenty of books on Always on Call, Forget Me Not. They're Your Parents Too, the Alzheimer's Action Plan book. So there were so many books on caregiving that I've collected through the years, not also articles. And I'm sure, Michelle, you have a collection also, but fewer books on what it's like from the person's perspective who has a memory problem. So let's go to the next. So I have some of these books, but not all of them. They're all good. There's Living in the Labyrinth, Partial View, On Pluto, which I just finished last night, talk about cramming for this presentation, Cotton Wool in My Head. And what's so interesting is that the only way I really believe that the way that we're going to get ahead of this, of memory loss and looking at it as a disease that needs to be cured and treated is through advocacy. And look at what we've done with other diseases. We've made headway with cardiac disease. We have statins. We have things to lower blood pressure. I believe, and I don't think I'm a false optimist, that we will find just what we can to sort of abridge the damage that whatever it is that does it to people's brains is stopped, that we stop the process early on. And the only way we can do it is that if we all become advocates, whether you're a professional, person who's dealing with this, a caregiver, we have to get more money for research. And so that's going to be one of my my positions. Has anybody read any of these books? Put in the chat whether you've read any of the books or you have a different book. And let's see. Still Alice. You know, Still Alice did a lot to pretty up the problem of memory loss. She was young, she was pretty, but it gave a human face to it. And I think in that way, first of all, the book was very good. I think it did a good job. Still Alice. I recommend any of these books, or I would welcome a suggestion. Still Alice, somebody else read that. Stephen Vega raised his hand.
Which book would you recommend most for someone who has vascular dementia?
Oh, good question. I'm not exactly sure. I think, you know, sometimes I don't know of a specific book that covers that, but I'm sure there is one. If anybody does, you can let Stephen know. But I think just becoming familiar with it. There was a book written by a woman who had a stroke and she called it her stroke of luck. And another book that I saw recently, and I'm blanking on the name, but you know, it's good to become familiar with it. And sometimes you feel like I'm reading too much and you need a break from it, but it's good to hear other people's stories. That's why support groups are so wonderful. So let's move on. And if there's a burning question, just put it in the chat room or let us know you want to say something. Next. Oh, I don't know. How many of you remember the TV show, The Naked City? It was sort of like the Law and Order of the 1960s. It was a police procedural drama. focusing on cases in New York City. And the film's famous closing line was, "There are 8 million stories in the naked city, and this has been one of them." Well, with an estimated almost 7 million Americans living with some form of cognitive decline in this year, this is a good tagline because, as Lisa Gwither said, when you've heard one story about memory loss, you've heard only one story. They're all different. They share commonalities, some of the sadness, some of the challenges, but one story is one story. Okay, next. Here's a very good book. This is by Lisa Snyder. She wrote the book, Speaking Our Minds. And what she did is she had long conversations with 7 different people. They each had a different type of memory loss. One of them might have also been vascular. And she really took their stories out of the shadows and brought it to the forefront. And so they shared wonderful quotes. One person wrote, and at the end, it's the last quote I have, "I'm at ease." And I'm one of those people who is blessed to be that way. Now, we may not all be that cavalier about having a diagnosis of something we don't want, but that's one person's perception. One woman told me, she said, "I'm glad I found out what I have because I thought I was going crazy." And it gave her an explanation and a way of thinking about it. And this also impressed me. It's kindness that we hope for the most. We hope that someone will be gentle with us as we face uncertainty, somebody we could trust. And, one person said, "I think it's important for me to help others know who I am and what I'm experiencing and advance the understanding about memory loss." So, and again, it hits people out of the blue. You're going along with your lives until you're confronted by memory loss, confusion, nervousness, loneliness, isolation. And if you're reading a book, it's as if you're reading a book and someone had torn out the pages out. So that's what it can feel like. And I really applaud these people for speaking their minds and sharing it. Next slide.
Hmm.
Get the next,
I'm going.
you're going.
Yeah.
Somebody want to sing a little song while we wait? Okay. This is another very interesting book, and not just about memory loss, but it's about life after the diagnosis. And actually tomorrow at Greenwich Hospital, I'm leading a discussion about how doctors deliver bad news, what it feels like from their point of view. Not just how should they do it, how do they do it, what is the impact on them, and who are the after people that have to come in and help other people adjust. Because the moment you get bad news, you see life differently. You think in terms of before and after. He also goes on to say that bad news gives you a new reality. You know your life will never be the same, and something massive has happened. And he suggests not to make major decisions until your head stops spinning, then look ahead and look at what you have to do today, tomorrow, and tomorrow or this week. I always tell people it's important to be short-sighted. We have to make long-term plans for our children, even for our own retirement. But when it comes to dealing with a crisis, like illness, whether it be a cancer or a stroke or memory loss, you got to look at what's right in front of you. So I say, if you're lost in a forest, you don't want to find the way to what road you have to take to Greenwich, because that's your destination. You have to look and make sure that you don't trip over a branch that's on the floor and break your ankle, because then you're never going to get out. So sometimes it helps to be short-sighted, at least in the beginning. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Here's a big one. To tell the truth, disclosing a diagnosis. Do people want to know? Well, years ago when I started in the field, I was in California at the Motion Picture Home. I worked with people who were in a retirement community for those who worked in the entertainment industry. Some of them were totally independent, some needed some care, but we did have a geriatric evaluation unit where most people came because they were having memory loss. This was over 30 years ago, 35 years ago, and people who came there already were pretty advanced because people didn't recognize early memory loss, so they didn't want to. Well, this is a study in Neuropsychiatric Review, which concluded that patients with early stage memory loss want to be informed of their diagnosis. People said that it helped them validate the recent changes in themselves. One person put it, a final piece of the jigsaw was clicking into place. So I'm going to ask you guys now to go into the chat room and tell me yes or no. That's all you have to say for disclosing a diagnosis. You think a diagnosis should be disclosed, yes or no? You have a yes? Yes? Anybody want to say something? Yes, we do. Yes. Yes. Yes.
It depends upon who I'm disclosing to.
Very good. And that's the other thing is, who do we want to know? And do we want to be the ones to tell them? You're right. Somebody was telling me that she had a little TIA and it was in her record, but she had no symptoms with it. She wasn't impaired. And she had to go back to the hospital and say, I had a TIA and you wrote in my medical chart that I had a stroke. And maybe a TIA is a little stroke, but it's going to read differently to different people. So I think we want to be careful what we share and exactly who do we share it to. If you're working, you may not want to share it to people at work if your performance at work isn't being impaired. Who do we share it to? Oh, a TIA, somebody wants to know what that is. That's I'm not sure I'm pronouncing
Transient
it right.
ischemic event.
It's like a little stroke in the brain, and it rarely causes permanent damage, but it may show that people may need to take certain medications or blood thinners, etc., to prevent another stroke. But so it seems that most people said, yes, people should be told the truth. People should be told the truth, the people who go for help. That seems to be the predominant answer, Michelle.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Okay, so somebody asked a question. Who do we want to know? So next slide. This is a slide that, when you're given a rough spot, I like this. Robert Frost said this. Hope is not found in a way out, but a way through. And one of the things that I really admire about Caring Kind is that you give people a way through. This is what you have to do now. This is where you get help. This is what you're going through. So I think this is perfect for Caring Kind. Okay, so let's go to the next one. So in my research about a diagnosis, I found this from something from the Alzheimer's Association 2017. And the issue is, I am more. Memory loss is now part of your life, but it doesn't have to define you. So it asks, how would you define yourself? So I filled it in to see what kind of word cloud I got. And I said, I'm a neighbor. I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, I'm a spouse, I'm a friend, I'm a therapist, I'm a teacher. And then it asks you, what do you like to do? I'm a walker, what's your person? Easygoing, generous. So I filled in all these answers, and all of you I can send Michelle the link, and everybody can make their own word cloud. And it just reminds us that we're more than the one thing that's wrong with us, right?
Mhm. You can put that
Okay.
in the chat, Ronnie, the link later to the word.
Oh,
cloud.
okay, I'll try to find the link, but
Mhm.
if not, I'll send it to you because I think it's important. And the things that we are, when you retire, you may no longer be a teacher, but you still may be funny, committed, kind. And so we can still keep a lot of ourselves, and we may bring more tasks that we can do. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Getting a diagnosis. Whoops,
No.
one before.
Mm.
Getting a diagnosis. And so we'll also take some of your input. Getting a diagnosis. So what does that entail? Usually it entails Oh, blood tests, CAT scans, MRIs, a good history, a genetic history. And, you know, because what you want to do is rule out any of the things that can be causing memory loss that aren't a dementia. And that can be depression, things wrong with your thyroid, having a little stroke. So you want to get a good diagnosis, but you want to get a diagnosis from a good human being, someone who looks you in the face, talks to you, and explains to you clearly what your diagnosis is. But testing can feel humiliating. One woman said, after 4 hours of testing, I was told I have dementia. And I told the doctor, my brain is getting older faster than my body. It is upsetting. I'm a lot smarter than this shows me to be. And I think a lot of people feel that way. And I had one woman who was terrified in a support group. She was terrified of having to go back and be tested again, and have to draw those intersecting pentagons. And somebody in the group happened to be a retired architect, and he practiced with her for half an hour on how to do those intersecting pentagons. And you could see that we don't want testing to be humiliating. And oftentimes it feels that way. But, you know, it's one way to sort of dig in and see what is really problematic about problem solving, word finding, etc. And so sometimes denial is exceeded by recognition, and people have to face the fact that they are having problems. And I think a big part of the difficulty is stigma. So let's go to the next slide. So who do you tell? Anybody have some input about who do you tell and what you tell?
The people you live with, for sure, your most immediate family.
Right, your most immediate family. Sometimes that's hard, especially grown children. You don't want to be marginalized. But yeah, there are certain people you might feel obligated. I live with these people. They need to know my story. Anybody else?
Grown children, I think, recognize it in us long before we recognize it.
They may recognize it in you before you even see it in yourself, or you may know but be hiding it, covering it up. Or sometimes I've seen grown children, you know, one woman told me that she was trying to tell her son something she's been trying to tell him for like years. And he said, Ma, you told me that already. And she says, well, you don't listen the first time. So you have to kind of figure out what is the message and can you take it in? But what is it like when a grown child tells you, Mom, I think there's something wrong? Is it hard to hear from a child?
I think it's hard to hear that from anybody.
Yeah. Right.
I think it's especially hard to hear it from your children because you're used to being the one that raised them. And that role reversal in life is probably one of the most difficult transitions.
And you know, it's interesting you talk about role reversal. I have found that it's never truly a role reversal where, you know, the adult child becomes the parent. They may take on some of those roles, but it's never a complete role reversal because your mom is still your mom. And I remember when my mom had Parkinson's disease, and she kind of kept her intellect pretty sharp for most of the time. And even though she was debilitated in some ways physically, when I would go to see her, she loved good posture. And she would just give me what she called a Zets on my back, a real big shot, sit up, Ronnie. And it was like, okay, Mom, I hear you. And so I think that it's never a full role reversal. We don't want to parent our parents. One woman said very poignantly that her mother, she was a 90-year-old woman, and she said her mother said her motto was, may I never be helpless in my children's arms. And yet we're all vulnerable. And it's good if you have a child who's willing to be of help to you. So who do you tell? Like, well, I think Stephen said you got to tell the people who are closest to you, who have a stake in this.
And another person said in chat, the people you trust.
The people you trust.
Mhm.
And you know, the truth is, when we have a problem, and whether it's a health problem or an emotional problem, when we can talk to someone we trust, we feel lighter. It's just not as bad once you say it. And that's what good friends are for. So it could be a good friend that you share it with. And why should we tell other people? Anybody
That
have
they
any
can help
reasons?
us.
Yeah,
I think we need to tell other people so that they can help us with what we need help with.
right. And you can sort of take charge of it.
Yes.
This is what I need help with. My other question is, what words do you use? Memory loss, dementia, a neurological problem. You know, sometimes we want to sort of keep the words lighter because the words dementia and Alzheimer's are so frightening. So years ago, maybe 20 years ago, the Alzheimer's Association of New York had a program. It was an early stage program, and it was a very good program. And they had a panel of people who wrote letters to describe what their experience was like. And one man who happened to be my early stage group was writing a letter. And I said, I'll be your scribe. I'll type it for you. You tell me what you want to say. So he said, I don't know how to start it. So one of my suggestions was, why don't you say, I've been having some problems with memory. And he said, Ronnie, why don't I just say, I've been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. He was 61 and he wrote the most touching letter. He still had a lot of abilities left. He still was playing golf. And he just wrote a very honest letter that this is what I have. And I just wanted you to know because you are the people I trust. And he sort of ended with, I'll still beat you at golf. So again, sometimes we're more sensitive about the words than other people might be. And, you know, if people could speak the truth about their problems, there'll be less shame and bias, I
But-
think.
But we were
Yeah.
brought up not to speak the truth about our problems, which makes it especially difficult to do so now.
That's very true. We were taught, don't tell anybody your problems. Keep
Right.
it to yourself. However, in life, we find out that our burden is lifted when we could share it with good people and people that we can trust. So your first conversation, you don't have to tell everything about it. You don't have to show them your PET scan or your blood results or whatever. It can be part of an ongoing dialogue about your experience living with the memory problem that you have. And I think honest communication makes you feel better and hopefully the people that you're talking to. And you have to think, what do I want from this person right now? And you might say to a son or a daughter, I think I need some help with technology or with bill paying. And you can, it's like the Goldilocks theory. A little, not too much help, not too little help, just the right amount of help so that somebody doesn't rush in and take over your life. So that's one of the things that we can think about. And you hope that maybe families will say, and I tell families, this is what you could say, what can I provide that will help? Could be tech support, financial support, organization, finding a good doctor, things like that. People can ask for help. Next slide.
There was a chat saying telling someone helps to not create a vacuum, thereby isolating oneself.
That's
Very
good.
true.
Wow, that's very profound. We have to write all these things in the chat up because I think that sometimes the best advice are the ones that I see in the chat box. We don't want to create a vacuum and isolate yourself. And that goes for the person with memory problems and the caregiver. So what do you do? How do you deal with the forgetting, the blunders, the mistakes, the oops that happen? So what are some of these skills that some people have found helpful?
Feel free to
Anybody?
unmute yourself and you can share.
Yeah,
Or write it in the chat if you feel more comfortable.
yeah. How about breaking tasks into smaller steps? So like if you have to clean your house, you start with one space. You don't try to run from one room to the other. I mean, we all have strategies. Sometimes these little sticky pages are good. They help you. You put it on your car. I put it on the door to my garage if I want to remember to bring something. But sometimes one woman told me that her family would put these stickies all over the place. And she said after a while, the stickies were the problem. They were all little yellow stickies. They would be all over the place. And they just reminded her what she forgot, but she couldn't keep track of them. So sometimes it's better to keep a big yellow pad or an appointment, you know, all these strategies. Or sometimes just to say, oops, I forgot. But they're going to happen.
I
So
knew someone that would tape to her medicine cabinet right on the mirror a list of things that she needed to do every day as a way to remember. So when she got up, as she was brushing her teeth or washing her face, she would see her list.
okay, and sometimes you don't want to make the list too long. You want to make it doable. So it's possible. It doesn't seem like it's impossible.
Or you don't cover up your entire mirror either.
Yeah, that's right.
So
well,
when someone wrote making a note of an appointment on the large calendar, that's helpful. Mhm.
yeah, on the large calendar. And I think that a joint paper calendar, yeah, these are all good suggestions. The other thing is, you know, what do you do with your keys when you get out of the car and you come into your house? I have a little bowl that I put it in, and it's right by the front door so that I always know where my keys are, or most of the time. And people find the same thing with their glasses. Well, if you have only reading glasses, I mean, you can buy them really cheaply at CVS, and it's helpful to have a number of pairs of them. But some of the same strategies that people without memory loss use can be helpful to those with memory loss. Let's go to the next slide.
That's absolutely true, because I habitually lose things as I'm constantly doing something. So I find creating good habits, like we have a key holder in the kitchen, and I make sure the first thing I do before anything when I come home is put the keys in the key hook. And I take my wallet and I put my wallet in the drawer where it lives, because this way, whenever I have to leave, I already know where these things are. And when I don't do them is when I always am rushing to leave, but I can't because I can't find the keys or can't find the wallet.
Right. And I think that the other thing is when we multitask, when we're doing 3 things at one time, we're on the phone, we're writing something on our computer, and we're trying to write ourselves a note. Don't multitask. And even without memory problems, as we get older, it's harder to multitask. You know, do one thing at a time. That's that sense of mindfulness, being in the moment, doing one thing's in the moment. And so these are some of the challenges. And where did I get these from? From the books that I read by people who have early memory loss, and from my early memory loss support groups, that they may repeat themselves, that it's common to lose or misplace things. It's sometimes hard to find words. And you
not to
may lose-
mention, multitasking actually wastes time. Contradictory to popular belief, it takes longer to get anything done when you're doing more than one thing at a time.
Exactly. And you know, you wonder how younger people who seem to do multitasking get by. But there's been studies that show, with or without memory loss, that people who multitask, older people, they shouldn't be on their cell phone while they're crossing the street. They increase the risk of bodily injury. So we want to do the things we can. What happens when somebody repeats themselves? What do they do? And nobody
What is the response typically?
Yeah, like what happens when you repeat yourself? You find, you know, later on in the slide, in the next slide, I'm going to talk about what we don't want to hear, what people don't want to hear. But these are some of the challenges in just having a memory problem, if that is your problem, misplacing things, word finding, losing your trend of thought, but also having mood problems, depression or anxiety, which sometimes comes with the memory loss or comes with any serious illness or disease. And sometimes, although the news of having a memory problem is difficult, sometimes you feel relieved to have an explanation for the problem. You don't feel as alone. Next slide, please. Okay, this is what I call, please don't say these things to me. So sometimes a well-meaning family member might say to a mother, I just told you that, reminding the person that you've just answered their question. It won't help them retain the information for the next time. It's just likely to remind them of their condition and make them feel crummy. And this is distressing for both of you. Try to repeat the answer calmly. And again, I think of stories that I've heard. So one man would say, his wife would say, where are you going? He said, I'm going to see Ronnie. She's helping me, counseling me to be better to you. And so she would say, where are you going? He would say the same thing. And then it got more repetitious. And finally he said, but I told you I'm going to Ronnie. And she would say, now you're mad at me. And then he would scream, I'm not mad at you. And of course it would be a whole cycle. And I said to him, and then he'd always ask, what did Ronnie say? And I said, tell her that I told you that you should be much kinder and more patient. And she was so proud that I had said just what she wanted him to hear. And after a while, their dialogues became calmer and better, you know. And then sometimes people feel that they want to challenge you and they'll say, remember when? And this question can be a reminder of memory that's lost. And it can sometimes feel like you're being tested. They'll say, you know who this is? And you haven't seen the person for 10 years. And you go, no, I don't. And then sometimes when a casual friend, you know, if you go to a reunion from high school and somebody comes up to you and they say, do you recognize me?
You
Well,
say
no,
no.
you're 50 pounds heavier than you were when you were younger. Renee, you were going to say something.
I say, you say, no, I don't recognize you.
Yeah, sometimes you could say, just say no and smile. So, anybody have any other suggestions, what you don't want to hear from other people? Okay, so we'll move on. So this was something else I found on the internet. I did a lot of searching with my hands, not using the yellow pages, but using Google. And this was something that I found, living well with dementia. And so these were the recommendations: challenge yourself, stay connected, have healthy habits, express yourself, find your purpose, and nourish your soul. So how do you do these things? Challenge
With great
yourself.
difficulty.
What?
With great difficulty.
With great, some worse than others. Renee, how do you nourish your soul?
Too often I go for ice cream.
Okay. You know
And
what? That's not the,
I also try some self-talk, which sometimes works and sometimes doesn't work.
yeah, it's how we talk to ourselves. There's a whole type of therapy called cognitive behavioral therapy that says we have to change the way we talk to ourselves nicer, give
Yes.
ourselves better advice.
Also, 2 years ago, I was fortunate enough to do this program called Get Wild Fit that educated me on what a human diet really is.
Uh-huh.
And I cannot stress enough the relationship between food and mental health.
Mhm.
And that one of the things that I found, since I've taken, mom has type 2 diabetes, but I thought it was the pandemic that was zapping my energy, and it wasn't. It was the food I was eating. So it was a process, but I was already on that road. But the two things that really elevated my energy and my mental stability was taking away all dairy and all processed sugars. Now, we don't do any processed foods, but the two biggest ones that I find that are debilitating to the mind mostly is processed sugars, whether it's white sugar, anything processed. So for sweets, I will make our own sweets at home using organic raw honey or organic maple syrup.
Mm-hmm.
But white sugar or any processed sugars, I find, are one of the most debilitating things to the body, both physically and mentally.
Yes, people find that sometimes if they make a shift in their diet, they have more energy, they feel better, they have less GI problems. So, it's important to look at what you eat. But
And
I think
Renee,
it's
Renee, you can make your own ice cream. We do with coconut milk, ice cubes, and your favorite fruit, which ours is organic mango. So, and I do maple syrup and organic honey and mix them too, because they have two different type of sweetened flavors, but together they're dynamic.
Thank
Okay.
you.
And so how do you challenge yourself? Anybody can write it in the chat room or speak it out loud. Anybody do puzzles? Yep, somebody's shaking their head. Chris
That's,
Johnson?
Mom used to do word search puzzles and coloring in her coloring book,
Yes.
but she hasn't done them in quite some time. It's been a while.
Well, what works
You have some people saying crossword puzzles, learn something new, Luminosity app and art classes, Rummy
Yeah.
Cube, morning
Word
devotional
search.
exercise, yoga, reading, puzzles. A lot of really good.
Those are good too for people who are
Mhm.
not, because I'm not good at crosswords and neither is Mom, but the word search puzzles are very effective.
Wordle, spelling bee, and you'll see on Facebook, people brag about how quickly they get the Wordle in, and it's like, it's not that difficult, and it's just a challenge. It's a challenge to your mind, and it makes you feel good if you can get it. But playing cards, visit a museum, take a class. So over Christmas holiday, I went out to visit my daughter and my grandchildren in California, and I found out that my 11-year-old grandson learned how to knit because they found that if you teach boys how to knit, they seem to pay attention better. Well, the last time I knit was when I was 12 years old and I took home economics in junior high school and I knitted slippers. I haven't knitted since. And he taught me how to knit. So I've been making scarves, and it's nice to create something. So even if you haven't ever done something, you can learn something new. And I'm not doing anything complicated, just a simple knit. And it's fun to feel the wool and to see your scarf grow.
There's something else I'd like to add too that people can do in their comfort of their home is the deep breathing exercises twice a day, where you breathe in for 5 seconds, you hold it for 5 seconds, and you release for 5 seconds. And you do this 5 times. You do it in the morning and the ones in the evening. And that really does help to clean up some of the cobwebs, regardless of what anyone's dealing with.
Sometimes a little deep breathing does help. Somebody suggested In Bloom, Russell, Lumosity, and some others. And these are all good things, and you learn from each other. Express yourself.
Yeah.
Anybody sing here?
Oh, you sing. Go ahead.
Sing in the shower?
Sing. Go ahead. Say.
No, I don't sing in the shower. People in the hallway would hear me too. I'm a good loud singer, but
Okay,
it's over at the senior center is one place,
good.
and
Caring kind.
Caring Kind up at
Unforgettables.
Unforgettables.
Okay. Yeah,
I-
singing with a group.
And I like it very much. I think it helps me relax and enjoy life more.
Yeah, and that's great because I think that singing is good. And when you do it together with other people, you don't have to be a performer. You just have to sing. And it feels good. And whether you're singing Take Me Out to the Ball Game or My Country 'Tis of Thee or whatever, it's can be very good to sing and to share
Yes.
something. So I think that the other thing is, and when you express yourself, is join a support group. And it sounds like, Chris, you belong to a support group? Johnson, Chris
Yes.
Johnson?
CST.
CST is one
From Caring Kind.
from
Mhm.
Caring Kind.
Bravo, Caring Kind. No
Yes.
Um,
And also, there's a group of singers, of people that sing over. We have a senior center
mhm.
right across the street from where I live.
Lucky you. That's good pickings, you know? I think when it comes to nourishing yourself, some people find prayer helpful. Also connecting with nature. Like I said, all of a sudden, you know, the forsythia is in bloom. The daffodils are up, the crocuses are up, and it's like, wow, it happened again. Hard to believe, but here we are, and we have spring all over again. And there's something I think very revitalizing about being out in nature, even if it's only at the park across the street. And stay connected with family, with friends, with people at Caring Kind, with groups, revisiting family traditions, and whether it's celebrating Ramadan, evening meal with someone, or whether it's Easter or Passover, it's nice to share those traditions again. And, you know, have meals that you had when you were younger. Okay, next slide. And overcoming stigma. Stigma is a big bugaboo when it comes to memory loss. It's, you know, people used to not say the word cancer. They used to say the C because cancer sounded so awful. And I think that's how people feel about memory loss. So how do you overcome stigma? Well, I think it's with awareness, advocacy, having less negative connotations, being able to say, here I am, this is me even with memory loss, having less fear, and it's through information. That's how we make things better. We give people information. We need better public policy and future direction. We need NIA to devote more money to research. You know, if we could do it for HIV and we could do it for COVID, hopefully we'll do it for memory loss, and we can pull back the impact of memory loss on people. So what can we do, you do, your family members do? You could be open and direct, communicate the facts, seek support and stay connected, which is what Caring Kind is all about. Don't be discouraged and be part of the solution. To whom I may concern. Yes, we're going to talk about that. Michelle's going to share something about to whom I may concern. And thank you, Maureen Matthews, for starting that. Does anybody know the story about the old man who was planting a tree and somebody passes by him and says, why are you planting a tree? By the time that blooms and is in full bloom, you're going to be long gone. And he said, because somebody planted another tree for me. And I think that those people who have memory loss need to plant a tree of understanding, of knowledge, of overcoming stigma for the next generation. And that's sometimes why people get involved in drug trials. Maybe because there's no perfect drug, which right now there isn't, but they feel like they're doing something to advance science. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, clinical trials. And the truth is, without clinical trials, there can be no better treatments, no prevention and no cure for Alzheimer's disease or any other disease. Scientists have to work constantly to find ways to treat diseases. And by participating in clinical research, you can help accelerate the progress. And the other thing about clinical trials that is sometimes helpful is that that when you're in a clinical trial, you get to be seen more often by a doctor and research team. But sometimes you're given a diagnosis and the doctor says, well, this is your diagnosis. They say, come back in 6 months, And you're saying 6 months, what do I do till then? And that's when you call Caring Kind. And one person said, participating in research gives me hope and assurance that I'm doing all I can do for himself and for the future. And treatments can never become reality without testing and clinical trials with human volunteers. And it can be rewarding and meaningful experience. They rely on strict protocols, informed consent. Any drug trial you're in has to provide informed consent. You have to be told the negatives, the possible side effects. They're usually double-blind studies, which means you don't know if you're getting the real drug or the placebo, or if you're getting the active ingredient until the end of the clinical trial. And we're not going to go, next, I'm trying to go to the next slide, but I can't. Michelle, you're in control of it. Whoops, back one. Okay, so there are different types of clinical trials, and I won't go into all of them, but there are phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And there are different numbers of people have been tested. But you should be informed of all this. And again, it's your choice whether you want to go into a trial. And although I wanted to say at the very beginning, this is not a talk where I'm going to be talking about amyloid plaques, the tau hypotheses. I'm not going to be talking about the different drugs. I'm not going to be talking about vascular dementia. I'm talking about the human experience. But here are some of the hypotheses. There is neurotransmitter, neurovascular, some of the words I can't even pronounce, but that's not what we're talking about. But I'm sure that Caring Kind does provide training on and programs about the trials and the scientific aspects. Am I correct, Michelle?
Yes, we're going to have research symposiums and information about the different trials that are out.
Okay,
starting
so
quarterly.
quarterly.
Coming-
Okay,
yeah,
well,
coming
put me on the list. I want to be able to join.
Mhm.
So I'm going to go on to the next slide, which is about support groups. Well, like I said, I ran a support group, and people would pass by and said, I thought this was a support group for people with memory loss. I heard laughing. I said, yep, they laugh, they cry, they learn from each other. But really what happens is you feel less alone, you learn to cope, and that problems aren't as drastic as you thought they were, and you feel understood. And that's the value of support groups. And Michelle's going to go into what kind of programs you have for people at the early stage. Okay, so next slide. Okay, so again, here's my week of diving into what's the research say about what's available on early stage programs. Well, there's a wonderful website. I don't know if anybody ever found it, called Being Patient. And one of the people they profile is Jim Butler, who talked about when he got his diagnosis, he had the good fortune to be in groups with a lot of people that had been covering the same ground, and he learned from them. And he said that he learned to be gentle with himself and to say, relax if you get something. It'll come back, and it usually does. And his best advice, be gentle with yourself, talk to your peers and friends about your thoughts. And he advises others to engage with their local churches, hospitals, Alzheimer's Association, organization, and support groups. Okay, next. And this is Being Patient, a very interesting website. And so Jim Butler, he talked about getting involved in a support group and having it be very helpful to him. So I advise you, if you haven't already done so, I would suggest that you find a support group. And again, Michelle will talk to you about what's available at Caring Kind, because sharing is so important. And if you can engage with people, you'll learn little tricks of the trade. As one woman learned from another man in the support group, how to draw those annoying intersecting pentagons. Didn't change the problem, but it made her feel better. Okay, next. Here's another guy, 50, when he was diagnosed with memory problems. And so what did he do? He sort of became an advocate. He runs memory cafes for people living with memory loss, and where they gather and do fun activities. And he deals with the practical, get your affairs in order and stay a contributing member of society. So again, he's another wonderful person to read something about. And let's go to the next. Oh, this is a message to your family. Hear me, listen to me. And to your professionals, your doctors, the social workers, the group leaders. Nothing about me without me. You want to have input. Be patient with me. Remind them I'm still here and I can contribute. Include me in activities. Be my best friend. And the best thing, the people that I work with said, the nicest thing that her husband said to her is, Edith, I have your back. Simple. I have your back. And that's what we try to have with people that we care about. We have their back. So, fun, laughter, comedy, is it possible? Well, there's a woman, I don't know, Michelle, if you ever heard of her, Dani Modisette Klein.
Mm-mm.
She's in California. So, and she happens to be a comedian. And when her mother developed Alzheimer's, and years into her decline, it was hard for Dani to connect with her. And yet Dani has a wonderful sense of humor. And so one of her friends said, well, your mother doesn't want to hear from you. So she had a friend who was a comedian come in and she'd go to see her mother, and her mother was hysterical laughing. Somehow this other person tapped into the mother's sense of humor. Well, I think it's good to bring humor into your own lives through cartoons. Oftentimes I'll put on my door at work the cartoon of the week, and it could be something I see in the Sunday paper or other cartoons that just strike my fancy. A little bit of humor can help. Watch old movies and TV shows. I Love Lucy, Mary Tyler Moore, Laverne and Shirley, American Idol, Carol Burnett's song, Singing in the Rain, other musicals. Sometimes these are just uplifting. What does anybody else do for fun? Renee, do you have fun?
Yes, from time to time.
From time to time. Well, that's like all of us. You can't have fun all the time. Okay.
Right. I like to walk. And so for fun, I'll take a walk sometimes into a place I don't know and see if I can find my way back. But I like to walk and be outdoors.
Good. Yeah, being outdoors is wonderful. I think we all need fresh air. And lightheartedness and silliness. Again, singing even goofy songs, dancing, tell simple jokes, and create an environment of joy.
And
walk
being
life-
with friends,
Excuse me?
being with friends and people I like.
Being with friends and people you like. Much better than being with people you don't like, right?
You're darn right. Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, so we're just going to be finishing up here, and then I'm going to pass it on to Michelle. And before I pass it on to Michelle, maybe we can take a 5-minute break. People need to, and we'll just chat. Those are here. But I wanted to talk a little bit about stigma, which is the next slide.
So do we want to take, so if it's 7:05 now, we'll come back at 7:10?
Well, if you're ready, who's ready for a break? No?
Let's see. Maybe they put in the chat they're ready for a little break. We can keep going if no one wants a
Yeah,
break.
we'll keep going. and
Okay.
then, you don't need a hall pass if you need to go to the bathroom. You can just do what you need to do. Okay, so the next slide is on stigma. There's, again, a wonderful report, World Alzheimer's Report, Overcoming the Stigma of Dementia. And this is really a wonderful report, and I can make sure you get a copy of it, Michelle, that you could share.
Mhm.
The tips are: be open and direct, communicate the facts, seek support and stay connected, don't be discouraged, and be part of a solution. And the way you be part of the solution is you become an advocate. You do the Alzheimer's walk. You let
The
your
Caring Kind Walk.
you care up your caring kind walk, right? Because stigma and stereotypes are significant obstacles. And then let's just,
Oops.
so here are the different, there's so many a different logo. So when I first started getting interested in working with people who had Alzheimer's, this was the button. And I liked their motto. It was "Stand by me." And I kind of like that. And they switched to this face, head, and sort of this is a tube, like an experimental research tube. And although it's interesting saying we're going to work on it by looking at solutions, I still like the "Stand by me." And I do really appreciate caring, kind. Two of my favorite words, caring and kind. And I think that's really what the ticket is. That is the heart of Alzheimer's or dementia caring. So Stephen Vega, can you read what he said? I'm gonna.
One of my favorite songs to sing is "Stand by Me" by Benny King. Yes, that is a good one.
Yeah, so stand by me, because that's what it's all about.
Mhm.
It's all about feeling you're not alone. Nothing about me without me. Somebody said they really like that. And rallying to the cry of the disability community. And one of the things I noticed about caring, kind is, and I said to Michelle, pardon the expression, you don't have any tchotchkes, you don't have any little buttons, but maybe you're saving your money for the services that you provide rather than trying to give away buttons or t-shirts or anything else. And again, caring, kind is, I'm amazed. And how many years has caring, kind been up and out around?
Well, it was the original New York City
Right,
Alzheimer's Association. And
right.
so I can talk a little bit about that when we go,
Okay,
when I put
okay.
up my slides. Yeah.
Okay, so let's do the next slide,
Mhm.
which is we're going to get into what caring, kind has to offer. So I wanted to go on to advocacy. Has anybody ever been to Washington to advocate for more money? Okay, so I did that, and I brought my husband with me, and it was wonderful because we spoke to our senators and our congressmen, and we went to a Senate Select Committee hearing. And the most important thing was not the slides from the doctors talking about the incidents, but it was a person speaking about his personal experience of dealing with memory loss. And that really got people's attention. So we have to really advocate and get out there and let our voices be heard. And now I'm going to pass it on to Michelle.
Oh, thank you, Ronnie. So any questions for Ronnie while I'm pulling up just some different information? Now that I have everybody here, we have a nice big room. Anybody have any questions for Ronnie? Thank you, Ronnie.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
And it's so important to have the person diagnosed, who has a diagnosis of a memory loss, to have their voices heard. And
Right.
because it's really, we can't do what we do without knowing what a person who is diagnosed wants. So we need to have faces and names at the table. And I'll talk about some of our early stage programs and a little bit about caring, kind. So be kind as I try to share my screen.
Yeah. And we're all in this together. Because like I said, if you're not worried about getting Alzheimer's disease, everybody should be, because we're all candidates for it. But hopefully we can do things to.
Wrong screen. No.
Okay.
Stop sharing. Try again. Here we go. Okay, can you see this screen?
Yep.
Great. I'm going to go back to the beginning. So I just wanted to talk to a little bit about those of you who know who Caring Kind is, and a little bit about our history. We are celebrating 45 years. So we started as the Alzheimer's Association in 1978. We were one of the first the nation's first charities to focus on dementia. In 1985, we became the New York City chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. And in 2015, we retained our independent charity status as Caring Kind. And we became true to what our mission was, which is to create and deliver and promote comprehensive, compassionate care support services for individuals and families that are affected by a memory loss diagnosis. We serve a multitude of individuals who are not only diagnosed with any type of memory loss, cognitive impairment, neurological loss. We serve family members, care partners who provide support. We service care staff, healthcare, aging, dementia service providers, and community and residential and cultural organizations that need training. And we do all of this through all free of charge. And we do it in a multitude of ways, one-on-one sessions, and I'm going to go through a few of those so you have an idea what we do, but we do it all free of charge, and our services are available in English, Spanish, and Chinese. So this is just a quick overview of some of our services, and I'm going to go a little bit more in detail so you have an idea. I know someone earlier had mentioned cognitive stimulation therapy, and some of you may be already enrolled in a cognitive stimulation therapy class or group, and that is offered through a grant that we have, and it's an 8-week session twice a week. 16 themes. It's a closed group, meaning people who are enrolled into these groups understand that they do have a memory loss diagnosis. But what we know from this, we have simultaneous sessions running, both evidence-based and research-based. That we know that this works because we have the evidence that's backed it, and we have research sessions that are ongoing as well through an NIA grant through Yale and UConn. So we know that this stimulates people's minds and language. It creates new thoughts and ideas and opinions, and it also improves people's moods, socialization, engagement, and quality of life. We're measuring that. And so we know this all to be true. So what's really interesting is when people join these groups is that it becomes a friendship, and the group dynamic takes place very quickly. People have said after being part of these groups, I've led them as well, is that, I may not have been able to find my words earlier in the day, but the minute I am in this group, I can find my words easily. I feel a sense of belonging. I feel I'm supported by others in the group. And these sessions have one of my dogs knocking on the door. These sessions all have the same agenda or same themes, similar every week with a different activity. So participants have a say in what their theme song is, what they're naming the group, and there is no quizzing. It's all conversation. It is conversation, but we do actually engage people's thought process, not only through reminiscence, but through conversation. And those are running virtually, and we are started to run them in person. We have, for people who are early diagnosed, we have a support group workshop called Journey Together. Those are for people diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment or early memory loss. And this is a 10-week session, educational, small group, topical discussions. And we have just finished our first Journey Together group, and we're starting our second. We do have a partnering together for the care partners starting simultaneously next month. So what is it like to live with a memory loss diagnosis, living with change, connecting your story, grief and loss, and telling your story, and telling your story, and telling your story again? We have Memory Advocate Peers, which is a program for newly diagnosed people with memory impairment, and their in or early stage, and their support partners. And people are paired with a former caregiver who provides support as someone who has been through it. Mentors provide support and education, how to live well, connect with the community, resources, and clinical trials. I heard someone had asked about to whom I may concern. Next week, we have our first actual sharing group who's going to perform at Caring Kind. You can look on our website if you want to come. I would encourage you to register if it's for a smaller, we have only limited space. But these are designed to give the person living with dementia or memory loss a voice. And so this is a facilitated discussion group we call sharing groups, in which people tell their stories and they're shaped into a script, into a Reader's Theater style performance. People get to invite who they want to come to these performances to share their stories. And then there's a talk back afterwards. So sometimes we talk about, when Ronnie was talking about when you're diagnosed, sometimes people hesitate to be diagnosed because there's a level of shame. So we talk about how we watch and how we observe people going sometimes from shame to acceptance, and then acceptance to advocacy. And through To Whom I May Concern and cognitive stimulation therapy, we often see people going through this journey, which gives people the sense of belonging because they're able to share their story with others. So To Whom I May Concern really is cognitive stimulation therapy is pretty spectacular to be able to offer, because we are asking people who want to become dementia stakeholders and make it matters. We want people to be, like I said very earlier on in this talk, we want people to be equipped to activate, to be dementia stakeholders and to shape policy, research, programming, and dementia services. Why? Because I can't assume, and nobody else can assume, what it is that you would want. We want your voice heard, and we will train you through this this stakeholder training program. We will help train you to be better advocates and to learn how to be able to get your voices heard, and have that seat at the table to be able to shape policy and research programs. So that is the stakeholder training. We offer those individuals who may not have a caregiver, that we call it Life Pathway, who still need to, when you're diagnosed, how do you take care of yourself when you don't have somebody to help you? What do you need to do and to put it into order? And we help you make a plan. We do have engagement programs through Connect Culture. Some of you may have already experienced our Connect Culture. So we partner with the museums throughout the area, the botanical gardens. We have Connect Culture, Connect Baseball. We have meetups, lots of opportunities to join us.
How are you?
For those individuals who want to stay safe, we offer the Wander Safety Program. If you need if you need to call our helpline, the number is here, 646-744-2900. If you need to talk to a social worker, this community-based organization, we are full of social workers who are happy to be able to help you. And then we have our educational workshops like this, family caregiver workshops, legal and financial, and we have one-on-one coaching services led by a social worker, should you need that help. So partnering together was the one for the dyad, for the group, for the caregiver of someone they're caring for, that runs concurrently with Journey Together for the person. And then a little bit about some of our other topical seminars that we do. So tonight was this wonderful one. Thank you, Ronnie, for sharing. And that's a little bit about what we offer. We do have our Chinese outreach, who spends a lot of her time in Beijing, in Chinatown. We do have outreach in all the different communities and the 5 boroughs and beyond. So, and Zoom has certainly made the world a lot larger or smaller, whichever way you look at it, that you don't have to be in New York to be able to access our programs. So I always like to say that until there's a cure, we'll be caring and kind. And that's who we are. And there'd be nothing more than I would like to be someday out of a job because there's a cure, but until now, we'll be caring and kind. Anybody have anything they want to add? We could end early if you want, or we
I
can certainly
just
open
wanna
the floor to questions.
Good idea. I wanted to say that it's good for us all professionals to be caring and kind, but it's equally important for everyone to be kind to themselves and caring and, be patient. And, when your family member reminds you, you forgot, you have to be kind also and recognize that they may not know the right words to say. But somebody wrote, Teresa, I think, wrote something about the New York Times story about, that they're not sure about the amyloid and the tau hypotheses. How many conferences have we gone to where I have slides and slides of what tangles and plaques look like? And, so maybe we're not ready for we don't have the answer yet, but I said, I do believe that by being advocates and forcing our senators and congressmen to vote for higher budgets for the National NIA, National Institute of Health and Aging, we'll find a cure. We will. I'm optimistic. How about the rest of you? Hopeful?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And incredibly grateful for Caring Kind, because this kind of supported information I've not come across anywhere with any of Mom's medical professionals that are in charge of her physical and mental well-being. This is just priceless information, especially for a caregiver, where this can be really scary as to know how to give the correct support, because a lot of times everyone wants to support, but sometimes the support they give can be more damaging.
Well, they say, do unto others as you want others to do unto you, but I think we have to do unto others as they want to be done unto, and that's something you can only find out by asking. So, but this was a pleasure, Michelle, and it's a wonderful organization. I love the
Thank you.
website. I love the colors of your website. They're very happy.
Hi, Shira.
Michelle, it's Shira. Can I say a quick thing? Is that okay?
Yes, please do.
Hi, everybody. So I'm also part of the Caring Kind team. I'm a social worker on staff, and I support particularly the Jewish community, but anyone who also calls our helpline. So I think if any of this information you found to be too much to take in at one time, I think the one thing you can walk away with is sort of that Caring Kind hopes to be here on this journey with you. We are evolving. A lot of our programs are new. I suspect that if you check back in with us at different points, you will see that we have more programs than we've had in the past, and they are evolving. And that's, if there's something you want to follow up on, the very first point of contact is the helpline, which is sort of like a centralized point of intake, and they can address your questions, whether it's related to you as a caregiver, care partner, or you as an individual living with cognitive decline. And I want to thank Ronnie so much, everybody else.
Nice to meet him. In a way, I wish we were all together, but it makes it kind of easier. I didn't have to take the train down to the city. But it's really good, and somehow I've learned to embrace Zoom. So here's a group hug for all of you. So anyway, thank you so much for inviting me, Michelle. Keep up the
Thank
good
you.
work.
Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. There's another
Thank you,
educational
everyone.
seminar if you check back.
Everybody.
We're like
Next
living
month.
the Jetsons era, right? The Jetsons-
Thank you.
Things
Thank
would be
you.
on the video screen, and here we are living the Jetsons cartoon life.
There we are. Who would have thought it?
Okay, I hope to come
Anybody
back and
interested
see
in
you
coming
guys in
to-
person.
Yeah, to
Thank
whom I may
you.
concern, please check online and register. We'd love to see you in person.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I'll see you next time. Thank you, Ronnie, so much. It was
Goodbye.
wonderful.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for this
Thank you.
time
Bye-bye. I feel like I have
together.
45 new friends.
Yes.
Bye-bye. Take
Bye.
care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.